Welcome to Sachs Realty's Tuesday night podcast, where we talk about anything and everything real estate. Each week, we deliver expert information enabling you to make better informed decisions while keeping more money in your pocket. If you're interested in real estate, this is your show. Happy Halloween. I'm glad you guys are joining us on this fine Tuesday. There we go. Hey, Scott, you got your mask on.
Yeah,
guys, we've got a great show lined up. I have a great friend of mine from the West Coast, Scott Walters. We're excited to have him on with us. He's a realtor. One of the reasons that I love interviewing with Scott so much is because Scott is actually, he's in the trenches too. There are a lot of people that want to talk about real estate, but really don't sell real estate. They actually have no idea about how the business works. So I'm excited to have you, Scott, with me again, brother. Tell everybody a little bit about you. And guys, if you don't know Scott, I have his YouTube channel. He also runs a YouTube channel and educating people almost every single day. I think, Scott, you're posting something. But if you guys haven't already been introduced to his channel, you can cruise on over. The link is in the show notes. But Scott, without further ado, man, tell everybody who you are.
well, I'm Scott Walters on YouTube, apparently, according to my name on the screen. But yeah, I'm Scott Walters. I'm the Real Talk and Real Estate agent. I came on to YouTube pretty early on and started giving straight talk, calling the real estate bubble. And anytime the market exhibits bubble behavior, it's going to be crash risk. And then just giving some of my firsthand accounts on what I was seeing in terms of my work in real estate. Very raw, very unedited, very honest and transparent. And, there's so many things that have developed over the course of the channel, and a lot of catchphrases we've developed. But, one of the things I found myself saying early on and continue to say to everybody listening today, you always want a real estate agent that's willing to put your needs before their own. And that is a hard thing to find. And so my job is to make sure you can identify who you're working with. Are they sugarcoating it? Are they cheerleading? Are they just trying to get you to buy? Chances are they are. So now you need to understand the proper way to use your real estate agent. They work for you. Unfortunately, a lot of these agents see it the other way around. They think you're lucky to be even working with them. So I've been really just kind of being very transparent in my feeling on what, and this all circles back to the crisis. If it's not for the crisis, we're probably not talking to the depths we're talking today. And on the topic we're going to talk about today, the current problems or challenges rather for the National Association of REALTORS found themselves a little bit of hot water, Todd.
They sure did. Scott, why don't you tell everybody, how long have you been in real estate?
Well, I've been working in and around real estate for probably 20 years, but I started, like you said, in the trenches. And I'm very fortunate today. I work in the industry because I want to, not because I have to. But early on, I had somebody call me last night. They are like reached out to me, somebody in my area, and they wanted to know if I could, use them on my team. They just got licensed. And I'm like, oh my God, a new licensee. Horrible time to be coming in. But of course, I couldn't crush their dreams. But I took a call with them and started trying to, explain to them what the way I thought to poise them for success and trying to get into an industry as cutthroat as the one that we're currently in and otherwise, just in general. But I said, when I first started, if I saw a for rent sign in a yard, I would call that place and get a hold of the landlord. Hey, I'm a local real estate agent. If you need help with tenant placement, I'm happy to help you. Like, I would chase down anything. I didn't care what it was, a rental, a lease, a buy, a sell, a mansion, a mobile home. If it was real estate work, I would do it. But I've owned and operated mixed use commercial real estate for over 20 years and been working in and around real estate ever since. And now I work primarily nationally. I have a national reach. I'm helping probably 24 of my subscribers as we speak all over the nation with their real estate needs, whether they're buying today, tomorrow, next week, next year. I get them in touch with our team, and we start, it's a very personal situation. I always say I'm half therapist, half salesperson. I mean, if you're a good salesperson, you will know how to connect with people and find out what their needs are in a way that's not too invasive. So yeah, to answer your question, I've been working in real estate a long time, my friend, long time.
Yeah, definitely. So have I. I've been serving this industry since 1989. I can't believe I can say that. It's so weird. Sometimes I don't feel my age, and I look back and I'm like, man, I've seen a lot of changes in the industry. I can remember when real estate agents, it was a lot different, man. It was a different world. And, we've had a lot of changes. A lot of things have, really we went from back in the day, it used to be all men. And I'm not saying this to be chauvinistic at all. It's just a fact. I mean, it was a more of a man's industry, and now it's more of a woman's industry. I think there may be more women in it than men, but I'm not saying that for any reason. It's just there's been a major shift through the years. But really, what it has gone from also is a full-time business to a part-time or a second time, or second career kind of thing for many people. And as a result of that, I think that's when we really started to fail the consumers, is when we could say, hey, we can have a real estate license part-time. We could do this as a side gig. And especially as we came through the last 3 years or so, that really showed its ugly head, because a lot of buyers lost deals because their agents weren't available. And I think there's a lot of complaints that I hear about the last several years of being in the business. But I think that the number one thing with the buyers is they couldn't get a hold of their agent because they were, working a job, and therefore they didn't respond in a fast enough time to actually get an offer in or something like that. So we've seen a lot of different changes, a lot of shifts throughout the industry. But the biggest mistake, Scott, that I think that we've made as a leadership in this industry, besides, not having a very high barrier to entry in the business. And it's kind of like, somebody's failing in one aspect of their career and they can always resort to, selling real estate. That's the sort of the attitude of a lot of people, like, hey, I got into this business because it was easy, or they thought it was easy. It was easy to get in. But the biggest thing I think that we failed as a industry is that we put the agent, and back in the day, and the reason why I started saying that was that it was the company, it was the brand that mattered the most to the consumer. And, what happened was, it was, the broker was involved in the transaction. They actually cared about the customer experience. And I think through the years, one of the things that I've watched happen was that the broker became more interested in agent count and the agent themselves. And they said, hey, look, if I can grab as many of these agents as I can, if they only do one transaction or two transactions a year, and I add up all of these agents, it will amount to something. And they started to attract or spent their time incentivizing the agents to come with them, and they forgot about the buyer. They forgot about the seller. I'm talking about the brokers here, right? And they thought that the franchise models where they could grab all of these agents nationwide, worldwide, would be the model where they could make a ton of money off of the agent. And then they started setting up training programs for the agents where the agents would pay them to be in these programs. And, Scott, I mean, do you see where I'm getting at here? Do you agree with me?
I live in that, Todd. I mean, that's where I live. It's funny because, I love sharing a little bit of the inner workings of real estate with my channel. But, here's the reality. What happened to real estate is it's become a huge, the biggest asset class now in the world. So it's just this big it's just a Shark Tank in real estate now. Everybody wants in, everybody wants to make money. There's tons of money to be made. Like you said, back when you maybe started, or at least when our parents were buying houses, one income, you could be a blue collar worker, plumber, you own a house. Now the whole climate has changed. And the reality is now what it is, based on my research, the statistics, only 5% of active agents in your area are making a good living. The rest of them are barely getting by. 80% of all agents that get licensed don't make it past their first year. This is a dog eat dog industry. The brokerages now, it's a machine. It's not like back in the day where you had a mentor and a broker, and and that you would go through some, market analysis and check, your areas. Now it's all weekly sales meetings, trainings all week long on how to say stupid things like date the rate and marry the house and they're designed to get you to buy. They don't want you to wait to buy. They want you to buy now. That's all our trainings are geared towards, to get you to buy now. So that's where a good agent comes in, the one that'll stand the test of time, the one that every single buyer or seller is going to have their own motivation, and it's our job to protect them. So if I get a first-time home buyer that's spending their life savings jumping into a house in the top of the market where one of their incomes, a hiccup, can send them into a tailspin, I don't think I want to put them in the house. I'm saying, you know what, maybe we rent for a while. Or regardless, if we're buying right now, let's see what our payment's going to be to carry this house and make sure it's within its rent range. Because if something happens to you, you don't have to lose the house. A renter can make your payment while you figure things out. That's what I want to hear out of agents' mouths. And you'll earn way more business if you do that. How do you, I know that you asked? Well, of course I'm going to tell you, because it's been my personal experience. I'm busier than I have ever been. Utilizing those types of behaviors rather than fear tactics to get you to buy today, or whatever else I can do to get you to buy so I can look good and puff myself up on social media with, it's all some big Instagram reel, TikTok video now. Everybody's making a joke of real estate. This is serious business. This can ruin people's lives if it's not handled properly. And I think that's, now it's just grown to such a big industry. And that's why we're seeing now it couldn't tolerate that type of growth. It couldn't tolerate the crisis. It couldn't tolerate the bubble. And now we're experiencing the blowback in all kinds of different ways. So now we're seeing the stress test it was put under. And we're seeing certain stress tests reach right into the National Association of REALTORS, all courtesy of the crisis. This is all overstimulated housing, another byproduct of it. In my humble opinion, maybe I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure I'm not.
Well, let's dive in. You're familiar with the NAR lawsuit, I know. And the big news today, we'll pull this up. So this is an Inman article. And so I'm a subscriber to Inman. Guys, you can't just pull this up unless you have a paid subscription. But this is an industry, kind of subscription-based publication. But anyway, jury awards $5 billion to home sellers in landmark Sitzer Burnett verdict. Jurors on Tuesday shocked the real estate industry. Guys, Scott, is it a surprise? Deliberating for 2 hours and 28 minutes. But, somewhere in that period of time, about an hour and a half in, they came out and said to the judge, could you tell us again the calculation for awarding damages? So I think they knew shortly after an hour that the verdict was going to be for the plaintiffs. But anyway, Kansas City, Missouri, this was a 2-week and couple-day trial. The federal jury issued a verdict against the National Association of REALTORS and major real estate franchisors in an antitrust case that alleged some of the nation's largest real estate companies conspired to inflate real estate commissions. The suit represents approximately, this is blowing me away, 500,000 Missouri home sellers seeking reimbursement for $1.78 billion in commissions paid to buyers, brokers, which under the law will be automatically trebled to $5.356 billion. So I guess the thing here, Scott, is, man, does it shock you that 500,000 of these sellers jumped on this class action lawsuit?
Well, of course. I mean, what do they got to lose? They're not a whole lot. I mean, and it is kind of alarming when you see a jury come back that quick, especially after an hour asking for details on damages. You just know that you're done. So this thing didn't stand a chance. People, and that was kind of the challenge I have. You know, even if you're a new licensed agent and you jump in with a brokerage, they're going to charge dues and fees. So you're going to be paying and you're not going to do any business unless you come in a real estate bubble. You might get lucky and get a little business, but in a normal environment, you're not doing it. So we're charging people to train them to, be part of the brokerage. Now, I love, the brokerage has to charge fees, and there's a lot of them offer a lot of great resources and trainings and meeting and a lot of things available to you. But the reality is that, typically in the engine of real estate, we look for ways to make money, right? That's our thing. How can we make money? So I don't know, NAR, I can't comment in terms of, a jury decided they practiced outside their jurisdiction or whatever. And so, it's kind of curious to me I think this really comes down to, there's a lot of money flooded the system. It found its way into real estate. Somebody's trying to figure out ways they can make money wherever they can. And this is potentially something where, they got exposed for maybe charging fees that were somehow not as transparent as they should have been.
I think basically, what they're trying to say is that the cooperation rule from the National Association of REALTORS in order, and look, I think there are a lot of people that don't agree that if you aren't a member of the National Association of REALTORS that you should, they don't agree that you should be basically put out of business if you want to do residential real estate. If you're not a member of NAR, you don't have access to the MLS. You don't have access to the electronic lockbox systems that agents put on sellers' homes. You don't have access to certain forms that are critical in writing a contract. And, with each of the counties in the U.S., these specific forms. A lot of people, they think that in itself is an antitrust, right? Because if you're forced into this association and you're forced to pay these dues that you're talking about just to operate, right? And then you get down to you're forced to cooperate to be on the multiple listing service. And before this verdict was read, our own MLS, Bright, took cooperation, the requirement for a listing broker to cooperate with a buyer broker, they reduced it to 0. And well before, weeks before this verdict was, has been released. But the point is it may be a little too late. This dates back to 2015, these lawsuits, 2015 to 2022. So we're talking about a lot of sales that were transacted in the last, 7 or so years. But anyway, let's take a look at this. So the jury said yes, and also found that, so they're talking about, was there a conspiracy? Back up a minute. The case specifically centered on whether there was a conspiracy in the suits for subject multiple listing services in Missouri between April 29th in 2015 through June 30th, 2022. The jury said yes, and also found that the conspiracy had the purpose or effect of raising, inflating, or stabilizing broker commission rates paid by home sellers. The jury laid the conspiracy at the feet of every one of the defendants, NAR, Keller Williams, Anywhere, which is formerly Realogy. They own Coldwell Banker, Century 21, Corcoran, several others. They're a big conglomerate. RE/MAX. And by the way, Anywhere and RE/MAX settled out. I think RE/MAX settled out for, they said $55 million. Anywhere, I think, was $83.5 million. They got a bargain here because they settled out 2 of the class action lawsuits, where these other ones, Keller Williams, HomeServices of America, which is a Berkshire company, and 2 of its subsidiaries, HSF affiliates and BHH affiliates. So, they're really the ones that are held with this massive, settlement. The jurors found that the conspiracy had caused the plaintiffs to pay more for real estate brokerage services when selling their homes than they would have without this conspiracy. And they referenced the cooperative compensation rule, also known as the participation rule, requires listing brokers to make an offer of compensation to buyer brokers in order to submit the listing to the realtor affiliated MLS. The suit, originally filed in April 2019, argued that the rule violated the Sherman Antitrust Act by inflating seller costs. I guess the question here, Scott, is what comes down to it is a lot of people want to know, well, who's really paying the commission? And I think, did we lose Scott here? But a lot of the questions, guys, comes down to, who's paying the real estate commission? The buyers feel that they're paying the real estate commission because if they didn't buy the house, nobody would get paid. And then, of course, the sellers are saying, hey, according to this rule with the National Association of Realtors, why am I cooperating, or why is part of my fee that I'm paying the listing broker going to a buyer broker to compete against me on my own property? And I think that's how we got to where we are right now. Scott, welcome back. So I think you're muted. So the question is, Scott, that we come down to here, man, is who do you think pays the commission? Do you think that if the seller stops paying the buyer commission, the seller's going to reduce the cost of their house, or do you think they're going to still want the same amount of money? We lost him. He's muted.
Scott, you're muted.
So I guess that comes to question. And guys, what do you think? I mean, we can ask you as the audience. I mean, so let's just take, for example, let's say that a seller's selling a home for $800,000. And all of a sudden, they put it on the MLS. They enter an agreement with their listing broker for a fixed set amount of money. And the listing broker says that he's going to share part of that commission with the buyer's broker. And all of us, now we don't have to do that anymore. Is that seller going to still want $800,000 for the house is the question. Because the only way that, I guess the seller's saying they don't want to pay as much as a commission, but who's going to pay the buyer's agent? Does the buyer not have an agent at that point? Do they negotiate with the seller for their commission, the buyer's agent's commission? Or do they not have an agent? Do the buyers finance their agent's commission over the 30-year mortgage that they take on? What do you guys think here? Let's take a look. Hey, Joe, what is the poll? Where are we at with our poll? All right, we got Scott back. Scott is he's with us and not with us. Scott, can you hear? Here we go. All right, our poll, we have 231 votes, 32 votes. It's going up. Do you think buyers should negotiate and pay their own agent's commission? 53% say yes.
Can you hear me?
About half and half. We can, buddy.
Awesome.
Coming in a little hot, Joe. You can maybe adjust his mic a little bit.
Check. I have to put. Yeah, I don't know. I couldn't hear you, and then so I switched to Bluetooth. So we're on Bluetooth now. Let's see if that gets us to the finish line.
Buddy, we're talking about who pays the commission. So if a seller is offering a commission to sell their house, and I used the example of $800,000, and I guess they don't want to pay a whole lot in commission. So the question is, they're going to negotiate with their buyer, with the sellers, their agent. The seller's going to negotiate with their agent a commission, and then they don't want to offer cooperation to the buyer's agent. If they're not going to do that, are they going to drop the price of the house, or are they? What's going to happen with that?
Well, your guess is as good as mine. I really don't. I really don't know. I mean, this is kind of uncharted territory. I mean, there's times where, of course, we get asked to reduce fees, and usually we'll find a way to do that for somebody. But yeah, I mean, that your guess is as good as mine.
Do the buyers just not have representation?
Well, no, you're going to have representation. I mean, unless things change moving forward, I mean, this will be a slow, drawn-out process for sure. It's going to be hung up in court for a long, long time. I mean, the realities are, in terms of restructuring commissions, I'm not going to. It's not my job to decide.
Let's take a look at this article. I want to jump ahead here. There's a Housing Wire article that came out October 19th. I had a broker tell me that they made it effective immediately. Of course, I can't find anything. I think Phil, he may even be watching tonight, real estate broker down in Florida. But anyway, here you go. Real Estate Board in New York to require sellers to directly pay buyer's agent. And this is starting January 1. Listing brokers will no longer be able to pay the buyer's broker, right? So, and they had no idea what the verdict was going to be today. But this is saying that the seller has, and the buyer's agent will negotiate the commission paid to the buyer's agent. And here's the big question that I have for you, Scott, because, throughout time of being in the industry, there's a saying in real estate, it's called list to last. And, any tenured agent knows this to be true, right? You have the listing side and the buyer side. And the golden rule is ye who owns the gold makes the rule. And some people in the industry think that the listing agents, again, this goes along with this lawsuit, kind of own the gold. Because unless your contract is terminated, if you have an exclusive right to sell a property, that means you're the only listing broker that can sell the property. When you get that listing agreement signed, that's your gold, right? You put your sign in the front yard, you list it on the MLS because you're a member of the National Association of REALTORs, and you're offering up some type of compensation to the buyer's agent. And some people said, and some of the allegations, and we'll get into that, in court said, well, that's kind of not fair in itself because the buyer's agent who has their client under a contract, an agency contract, so that buyer can't really do anything. They're stuck. Right? A lot, unless they exercise some kind of a cancellation clause, their agent gets paid, right? But some say that the buyer's agent will look through the MLS and see who's offering the highest commission. And some say that their agent will discourage the ones that are lesser than the other and, kind of steer their client. And in testimony, they were saying that that's human nature, right? That by doing this way, you can entice a buyer's agent to convince their buyer to buy a specific house and not another house, maybe based on, what they tell them about that property. The problem that kind of goes even deeper is that most buyers say that they didn't know how much their buyer agent was going to make until the settlement table because they had a buyer agency agreement. They signed it. A lot of cases, the buyer's agent said, well, you don't pay me. It's free. And the buyers look at the settlement sheet and go, wait a minute, you just made X amount of dollars on me and I didn't know that. And they're like, I thought, you were free. I don't know what these buyers are thinking sometimes, but when they look at how much they overpaid for the house, they look at their buyer agent and they're like, well, if I knew you were going to make this much money, I would have picked a different agent, not you, right? If I knew that was going to be part of the process. But anyway, so here we are back to the story of list to last. A lot of people say if you're in the industry you want to be a listing agent because you own the gold, you stick the sign in the yard, you become the neighborhood expert that all the sellers want to talk to, and you go sit on the beach somewhere after you list a property while the buyers show your house, and over exaggerating a little, maybe not, and the buyer's agents show your house and, negotiate while you're sitting on the beach with your laptop. And at the end of the day, list the last, you have the gold. But what I think here is that if we look at this New York article talking about, New York brokerages are no longer allowed to share their commissions with a buyer's agent, that the buyer's agent will negotiate directly with the seller might just say, I think the buyer's agent is more important than my listing agent because the buyer's agent has the gold because they have the one with the money. What do you think?
Well, I mean, yeah, it's a lot to digest, but yeah, I mean, typically, most agents want to have the listing. They want to be on the sell side because we know we're going to list it, we're going to photo it, we're going to get it on the MLS, we're going to hold our opens, we're going to hold our caravans, we're going to do, put it on lockbox and let you go show it. If it's lockbox go, which means it's unoccupied, go ahead and show at your own discretion. If it's occupied, then we got to orchestrate around owner or tenants. But I mean, I just learned old school. I was chasing down everything. So buyers, sellers, it doesn't matter. Lately, I've been working with more sellers, it seems like, than buyers, but that's just because of YouTube. But one of the things I will say is, I believe the transaction is fine. You got the buyer side, you got the seller side. What I have more of a problem with, and might be deviating a hair, is a lot of these big websites, the big realtor.coms, the big the Zillows, all these search engines, they're full of just click here, request tour when they're selling that click, and you're about to fall into the hands of a random agent. Or you just see a sign and you call the number and you end up in the listing agent's hands and they're going to double in the deal, double commissions. It's like going to court using the other side's attorney. You don't want to do that. You want your own representation to negotiate for you because the seller's obligation is to first to their seller. That's who they had first. So, I believe the transaction has just got convoluted, and we have too many hands in the cookie jar now, so to speak. And we're seeing some of the byproduct of that is people upset. They're like, wait a minute. Like this guy, because like you said, usually if I'm representing a buyer, I'm like, how much am I going to have to pay you? I say, you don't pay me anything. Seller pays commissions. Oh, okay, great. Now, if I'm representing a seller, and they're about to be on the hook for a bunch of fees and commissions, I provide them a net sheet. I said, this is your estimated breakdown of profits. So, for me, everything is fine. You want the buyer, you want the seller, you want industry standard on commissions, and you go do your job. That's it. And so I don't really know what's going on here with this lawsuit. Something went sideways. Somebody's mad. Somebody feels taken advantage of. It's all bubble byproduct stuff. Even if this was lawsuits that were occurring prior to the crisis, I really still think that we can circle a lot of this back to the crisis and the money printing and the overstimulating of the biggest economy and asset class in the world, the U.S. housing market. That's just dangerous at any level. And so it really kind of annoyed me at times because I'm like, am I the only one that sees this? It doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure this out. This is what happens when you overheat the U.S. housing market.
Well, let me ask you a question. Let me ask you a question because you touched on something that, now look, I mean, we're both in the same business. I mean, look, I represent buyers, I represent sellers. And my job depends on me doing this, right? But you just said something that, the lawsuit, there are a lot of people that I think that there are some parts of the lawsuit that I can't deny. I can't deny. And, I've seen it with my own two eyes. So, and I've heard things with my own ears. And, so let's just talk about if the seller, you just said they double end the deal. Now, if I'm an agent and I'm looking at the offers, and I just talked to a real estate attorney today, and he told me about this, something that happened I can't believe. But anyway, well, I can believe it. But here you're looking at the offers, right? And they come in like crazy. I have the listing and I see all these offers come in, maybe 20, 25 offers. But of these 20, 25 offers, I've gotten emails that say, I don't need an agent. I just want to buy the house. You can have the commission. Because a lot of these buyers, they got hip to it, man. They said, hey, look, if I bring a buyer's agent, I know that I can entice an agent with double ending the deal where they can get the whole commission without sharing it. And, and I'm going to go and I've gotten these emails. And, and now all of a sudden I'm getting all these offers. I mean, some people, by human nature,
right. I mean,
are going to look at that and say, if I take this offer or if I focus on this offer, I'm going to make more commission and these guys aren't going to get it. And a lot of the agents that are smart, and I highly recommend it, they're going to remember what offers their clients put on the table. And when it closes, they ought to be looking at the sale amount of what it closed for. Because in some cases, you may say, my client's offer was better than what was sold. And then you find out maybe that the agent double-ended the deal. And you sit there and go, okay, well, if that's possible for that to happen, that's dirty. That's dirty, right? And so you look at that and you go, if the seller says, I'm going to pay a seller broker this much money and I'm going to pay a buyer broker this much money, it eliminates that listing agent from being bad, from doing that bad habit, because they know they're going to get paid the same amount no matter whether there's an agent involved on the other side or not, right? Now, to top that off, Scott, there are states that have, and I don't know about you in California, but there are states that allow an agent to be a dual agent. They allow an agent, which blows me away. I think it should be illegal in every state. But neighboring Virginia, we're not allowed to do it here, but neighboring Virginia can. Neighboring Virginia, if you go to the agent can represent the buyer and the seller. How the heck do you do that?
Well, yeah, it's dual agency. And so we have it here in California too. Now we have to disclose, we have to let both parties know. And most of the time, if I'm selling a house and hey, like a lot of times we'll do office exclusive before these things go live. Hey, everybody, we got an office exclusive. It's going to be going live next week. We can do, a lot of times, because we like to keep the business all under one roof, right? So if I'm with Berkshire and somebody else is with Keller, whether if I get somebody that's like also a Berkshire agent, the brokerage loves that. I mean, of course. I mean,
and that's legal in California?
Yeah, dual agency is legal. So
no, I'm not saying that. I'm saying offering it up to your house only, your brokerage only, before putting it on the MLS and letting people see it and stuff like that. Can you do that? You
can hold stuff for, I forgot, it's a short period of time as an office exclusive. But there's a lot of rules that come along with that. Now, here's the thing. In the real estate, if I'm selling your house, and this was the craziest part. I lived through 2008. I thought that bubble was ridiculous. This one makes it look like a warm up because I didn't see above and beyond appraised values in the '08 era bubble. I didn't see over asking price. I didn't see waiving a contingency. I didn't see a line around the block to tour a home. I didn't see FOMO like I just saw. But even with that aside, if I collect a bunch of offers on your house, which is what I'm going to do typically through the crisis, and get you a bunch of offers, probably a bunch of over asking price offers, I'm going to show you, these are your highest, here's all your offers, here's your highest and best. Now, is highest mean best? No. Sometimes you might get a higher offer, but the best offer, its percentage of likelihood of making it through closing might be this one. It's all cash. It's, guaranteed close. This one's, VA or FHA and their minimum amounts down. And who knows, the lender could pull the plug on these buyers. So there's highest and best. So as a real estate transaction is mind-boggling. Like for me, it's just you're buried in paperwork, contracts, and that's why the NAR and all the updated forms. I mean, we're constantly updating forms, constantly every week. Oh, this form has been updated. So my job is to get you the sale done. The challenge I have with sellers is they don't see the best offers; they see the highest offer. Yeah, Scott, this one's like 100 grand more. And then so that's why you're seeing right now so many properties going through price reductions, pending and then listed again and listed for less. They got under contract for one price, fell out, and now they're back on. They come back on the market at that same price, can't get somebody else to buy, and I'm seeing so many.
We lost him again. All right, until we wait for Scott to come back. So I want to take a look more at this lawsuit. All right, let's. One thing I want to focus on here, because one lawsuit has now led to other lawsuits because of today's verdict. Only minutes after the jury brought back a favor to the plaintiffs, the Sitzer attorney files new suit against now Compass, Redfin, and other companies. Basically, this Michael Ketchmark filed a new lawsuit just moments after the jury sided with his clients in the Sitzer Burnett case. The new suit claims another batch of companies committed a conspiracy. It says Ketchmark of the law firm Ketchmark and McCrate filed the case in the U.S. District Court for Western District of Missouri on behalf of home sellers Don Gibson, Lauren, Chris, and John Miners. The case echoes the Sitzer Burnett case in challenging the practice of having home sellers pay sales commissions to buyers' agents, which the plaintiffs allege violates the Sherman Antitrust Act. Both suits, as well as a high-profile Moore case in Illinois, which is actually coming in the first quarter of 24. That's $40 billion, 10 times the amount of this lawsuit that they just announced the verdict of today. Described this practice as a result of an industry conspiracy that inflates both agent commissions and cost to consumers. And this includes now Compass, eXp World Holdings, Redfin, Weichert, United Real Estate, Howard Hanna Real Estate, Douglas Elliman, and again, the National Association of REALTORS. And I think one of the things that a lot of people feel in all of this, and we'll talk about the last really 2.5 years, or really from mid-2020, I'd say, until mid-22 for certain. A lot of the buyer's agents feel that their agent didn't really represent them at all. So when we're looking at these lawsuits, what we're hearing about right now are seller-based lawsuits saying, hey, I could have saved a ton of money by not paying the agent to bid against me. But really what we're seeing now is the real estate commissions having claims or filings against the buyer's agent, because they're saying that the buyer's agent, though they were getting paid to represent them, didn't really do a good job in doing so, because all the buyer's agent did was convince the buyers to overpay, waive their contingencies, and basically give up all their rights. Scott, welcome back. What do you think about buyer agents, Scott? Do you think that buyer agents have failed their clients in a lot of cases over the last 2 years, 2.5 years?
Yes and no. We show up and tell you this is the environment, and typically what I've seen is, let's say I show you a house and there's a ton of other offers coming in. I got to ask you, I go, folks, how much do you love the house? They're like, we really love it, Scott. Okay, good, because your offer is going to need to reflect it. We've got a ton of competition. Now many agents aren't going to talk their buyers out of buying. I mean, that's not our job. But it is sometimes our job to say, hey, listen, let's pass on this one. It's too competitive. So yes and no. That was just the environment we found ourselves in. We just had to go play in it the best we knew how. Now, agents that normalized that, oh, this is normal, that's the thing I had to really, I mean, there's nothing normal about this market. Like, at least say that. At least tell your clients this is a really abnormal market. But I didn't really appreciate that. But everybody's entitled to their opinion. So yes and no. It was just the environment. You know, this is what it's going to take to get the house, folks. What do you want to do? I mean, that's basically how I'd communicate that.
Let's take some questions. Here you go, Scott. I'll let you take this one. What is a fair hourly wage for a realtor? 50, 100, 200 an hour. Your house sits for 2 weeks. They worked 80 hours at 100 an hour. They get 8,000. Enough with the 5-figure commissions.
Yeah. Well, welcome to where I live, where, you know, $1 million, it's well over $1 million for the median home price where where I live. And I've talked to you guys all over the nation, you know, and I always preach to you guys, safety is really within the median home price national average, you know, 3s, 4s, 5s. That's probably where the most of the safety is. But, you know, there's some transactions that we really earn our money, and others we get really lucky and really smooth, fast. Wow, that was crazy. For me, I don't really look at the money. The money is kind of a byproduct. Like, I would do this stuff for free, and I do this for free a lot because I just love what I do. But yeah, I don't. You know, only 5% of realtors are making big money. The rest of them are barely earning a living. You know, many of them are making what they'd make, you know, over at just a big box store. You know, a couple commissions a year at best. And right now we're going to thin out the environment significantly, because if you were purely a commission-based salesperson, that was your livelihood, that's your source of income, you're done. It's the people that have been in this game for a while, that have multiple streams of income, that have insulated themselves, that are prepared. But if you're pure commission based, and kids, that's what I just saw. I saw people go get under new cost of living based on the euphoric bubble income that was a blip in the radar, and now loan applications that are an all-time low. So if you were relying purely on commissions to pay your bills, you're taking a hit right now.
You know, there were some studies that where they said, look, if this lawsuit is successful, which now we know it is, and there are, you know, a couple different schools of thought. I spoke with a real estate attorney after the announcement of the verdict. I said, where does it go from here? What will happen? And he said, well, you know, obviously this could mean that this becomes, you know, more and more states get involved, more and more class action lawsuits. The further now we have case law, the further, you know, along it goes, it could be used in other cases. But I think, you know, once you preserve testimony in court, it's kind of, I mean, I'm not an attorney, but it's kind of like public, right? So the attorneys can go by it, but I think what this attorney was saying was that now, because there could be an appeal, and the National Association of REALTORS said they're going to appeal the verdict, and this could take years to draw out. He said that a lot of times what will happen is the plaintiffs and the defendants will negotiate a lesser amount of money to pay it, to prevent it from dragging on, to give money to the plaintiffs and the attorneys involved, because they want their money. They don't want to wait. This attorney doesn't want to wait several years before he gets paid. He'd rather probably get paid now. So the game now becomes, can we negotiate a settlement that the judge will accept so that the defendants don't appeal it, and that the plaintiffs don't have to continue to kick the can down the road and, you know, take a chance on losing in the future. But I mean, there's a lot of, I mean, we can just kind of go back to the case here. We can, in the updates, Joe, live updates, we go down to Wednesday, October 25th. Give Joe a chance to find this. It was actually day 8 in the trial. Some of these, testimonies, there was a Krista Wilson, senior vice president of brokerage at Reese Nichols, testified. She was saying that there wasn't we were talking about, buyers agents looking at commissions and, kind of steering their buyers to properties that paid them more. She said that there wasn't steering, that steering doesn't happen today because buyers can see homes online. And I want to kind of set up an argument for this, not because I want to support the lawsuit or whatever, but I just want to kind of talk about this with you, Scott, because a lot of times, people say, well, the buyer's agent set them up on their MLS search, but a lot of times the buyers found the house that they wanted themselves, right? The buyers set their own searches up on Zillow, on Trulio, on homes.com, realtor.com. And basically they put their criteria in, and sometimes they selected houses to look at that was outside of the criteria that they even gave their agent, right? But what Krista from the Reese Nichols brokerage says was that it's impossible for a buyer's agent to steer a buyer because the buyers found the house themselves, right? Because buyers can see homes online, sometimes even before their agents do. I would say it's impossible, referring to steering. Still, Fraser admitted, and that if a listing offered a lower commission, that it would reduce a buyer's agent motivation to show a home. This is human nature. He said there wouldn't be an incentive. And I guess what I'm asking you, Scott, is would it be easy for a buyer's agent to convince them to not take a specific home?
Well, yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, some people are easily, it depends how your ethics, you personally are operating as a real estate professional. If you want to try to steer somebody, you're legally, you can't. Do agents do it? Of course. Now, some, like you said, nowadays, I have a lot of my buyers right now that we're helping. They bring us like, hey, this one just popped up. I like this one. Like they know about it before we do, because you see the Zillow and Realtor and all the other big search engines, they just scrape the MLS. So as soon as we upload something, it gets regurgitated, courtesy of their software, onto their sites. So a lot of like buyers today, like you said, you're on Zillow, you might set up notifications, alerts within the certain parameters. Maybe you've adjusted your filters to be different from the one that your buyer's agent set up their emails to get to you. Anybody could steer somebody and try to like be like, wink, wink, this house over here might be better because of X, Y, or Z. But yeah, I mean, we have a lot of influence. The challenge is, I think personally, is because of the lack of inventory and the upward pressure on the market. People were buying stuff that they normally wouldn't look twice at. And now a lot of them have buyer's remorse because they realize they don't like the house, they don't like the area. And it's a house they never would have bought had they not been placed in that high pressure situation where they felt like this was their only chance. And that's why you see 85% of all Americans now say it's not a good time to buy a house. And then you got buyer's remorse and people going upside down in their purchases, no longer, can sell the house for what they paid. So they're handcuffed by the house. Their low interest rate isn't saving them because they can't sell the house for what they pay. So, yeah, I mean, of course, steering still happens. It can still happen, in my opinion.
So, and I guess the other side of that too, right? So an agent may say, well, I'm not going to show that house because they're not offering enough in commission. But then there could be the other side of it where the agent really pushes the client because the listing broker or the seller ultimately offered a bonus to a buyer's agent that, showed the house and was successful in bringing the buyer to it. And I think that's where a lot of this lawsuit focused in on. We can go take a look here. This happened in also on that October 25th. Joe, if you go down to one of the things that they pulled out was that the plaintiffs in the case had previously showed a training video in which Belfari had one of the defendants had said that he would negotiate a commission, but only up, and that he pre-writes a 6% commission in listing agreements. He said he learned that technique from real estate coach Mike Ferry in the 1980s. Belfari also said all training is done independently. I'm happy to share what I did as an agent, but every company has its own training modules. He added, I participate a teeny bit in the Berkshire Hathaway Home Services training. It's always in line with what I've done in the past. So, here's the flip side of it is that he was negotiating or teaching, agents to get higher, convince their sellers for higher commissions. And some of the things that I heard and read about this was that they were basically using fear tactics to sellers. And by the way, everybody, ladies and gentlemen, commissions are always negotiable. There is no standard. There is no set fee. I think that's one of the things that's most important that we've been trying at Sachs Realty to scream from the mountaintop here at our, on our show is that, if it's between a buyer and their agent and a seller and their agent. But anyway, I think one of the things that they were saying is a lot of these agents were kind of fear mongering their sellers and saying that, hey, look, if you don't offer a big buyer agent commission, they won't show your house. I think that's kind of, along the lines of what they were getting at here with this lawsuit. And the sellers are saying, look, we didn't need to do that at all.
Yeah, well, I think that comes back to a lot of this crisis-driven byproduct. I think what happened for a lot of us, we got really spoiled. Like, we wouldn't work with buyers unless they were going to be easy and all cash. We didn't want to take listings unless we were making our rate that we're working at. And so this is where we'll separate the men from the boys, I believe, because for me, I'm happy to, like you said, I'll negotiate a commission as long as both sides are doing it. I don't want to reduce my commissions and while the other side, and like you said, I'm the one bringing the buyer, I'm leading the horse to water. But yeah, I mean, it's like you hit the nail on the head. Things are negotiable, but the bubble environment created an atmosphere that allowed us to start operating maybe a little more aggressively, and maybe that happened. Again, like, that's not my nature. I rarely get hung up on commissions and fees. And to our subscriber or a commenter, you get what you pay for. A good agent is worth their weight in gold. I can promise you that. Now, a new agent that's brand new, a deer in the headlights out there, maybe, you don't pay them, but they're going to get paid too. Usually, everybody gets paid. And that's why, for me, I always say, start working with your agent. Make sure you enjoy your agent. You have a healthy relationship. And if you don't, fire your agent. Get a new one, and you will find you need to find somebody you're going to be comfortable answering tough questions. Like, I ask tough questions to clients, and they give it to me freely because they trust me. They know I'm putting their needs before my own. So you can sniff out a salesperson or you can sniff out a rat. If you start getting, a bad feeling about your agent, just fire them.
Right. Well, don't just hire your agent because they're your best friend from college. I mean, and I think that here's what I think. So I'm going to just put it out there, tell you what my opinion is. I think that the seller should negotiate the fee for their listing broker to list and represent them in the sale. I think the buyer's agent and the buyer's broker and the buyer should negotiate the fee to represent them in the sale. I think that is the only way to have complete transparency in the deal. Now, with that being said, like commercial real estate, right? Because not having the seller pay the buyer's broker, in commercial real estate, this, in many cases, allows the buyer broker to negotiate with the seller to offset the agreement between the buyer and their buyer broker. if we open this up, now a lot of people say, well, if the buyer can't afford it because they can't afford a down payment, well, maybe that's something that we need to look at too. Maybe the price of housing would adjust according to what the buyers can afford. Right? Maybe this would open things up to more transparency. That's just what I think. I think it is kind of weird. I have to be honest. I think it is kind of weird to incentivize someone that is negotiating directly against the seller. And I say that, I know that's how it's been done. I mean, I know this NAR is a 100-year-old association. I think it's the oldest association in the United States. I get it. But I also think that it's time that business changes with the needs of the buyers and sellers. There shouldn't be a system that's etched in stone that this is the way we do it and forget about it. And if we aren't going to offer the buyer's agent at this point, we're just going to drop the ball and say, well, in this state we'll allow it, this state we won't allow it, this state. I mean, I think we should just open up the transparency. Guess what? I hate to say it, but agents are going to have to compete. Well, I don't hate to say it. I think what it's going to do is it's going to knock the bad agents out of the business. And that's what some of these studies said, that based on the plaintiffs, if they won, that we might see out of the 1.5 million licensed real estate agents in America today, we may lose 1 million real estate agents. Well, that certainly will separate the ones that should be in the business and not be in the business. That will also separate the ones that are saying, well, it's kind of like my second career. It's not my important job. It's not the one that I actually put ahead of my other job, but yet it's the largest purchase that most people ever make in their entire life. Ask the ones that aren't paying their mortgages right now, that went through massive buyer remorse because there was nobody stopping them, nobody saying pump the brakes and convincing them to go ahead and buy the house, because if you don't buy it now, you're going to be sorry. Because the price is only going to go up and you're going to be renting forever. And that's just going to be the way that your life is. And you're not going to keep up with the Joneses, and you should have a lot of fear of missing out, because if you don't do this now, you're going to give up on your opportunity. So buy the house that has the 25-year-old heating and air system and 25-year-old 35-year roof.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's pretty accurate. You know, like I was saying before, we're just working in this environment. This is what happens. And here's my challenge, I guess. You know, some areas, real estate's local. Some areas are going to get hit first. Some are going to get hit last. Some might sustain themselves. Nobody's got the crystal ball. You know, I've been citing on the air of caution. And most of my viewers, of course, have too. I think my challenge is, and I always say this, typically when the housing market exhibits bubble behavior, it's going to have crash risk. I think we should all be able to agree on that. I have a problem for a real estate professional saying no crash, and nobody can guarantee one or the other. It might be two sides of the aisle on this. Now, if you have financial gain in the markets, you're in the industry.
Scott, you just stop right there. What you just said, I've never heard anybody say, and it's gold. You just said that nobody should have the right to say that real estate is not going to go down. No one should be saying that, because it could. It could. There should never be out of a real estate professional's mouth is that we're not going to see a crash. Like people comment on your channel, like people comment on my channel in the industry, you were wrong. Real estate's not going to correct. There will be no adjustment. You know, it's not going down. What they're doing, at least by saying it's a good possibility that the indicators don't make sense, that the affordability isn't keeping up with wages, that the interest rates are making the median home price cost $5,700 a month with taxes and insurance that you may get canceled on. If you look at all the reasons why it should correct, because it's a bigger bubble than we've ever seen since World War II, and you look at all the reasons why you think it's going to go up. Doesn't make sense. Why would you as a professional be able to get the words out of your mouth? It's never going to crash. Why should they be telling people that? If they hear that, they should be running in the other direction. I never heard anybody put it that way.
I mean, let's play devil's advocate here. Let's say I was on the side of no crash risk here. This time is different. Rainbows and sunshine for real estate moving forward. Let's say that's me. This is what I would appear. I'd rather hear out of a realtor's mouth is, listen, folks, anytime the market exhibits bubble behavior, it's going to have some crash risk. I don't think there's going to be a crash, but I can't guarantee it, of course. That's all you can. What was that too hard? Could you not say that? Anytime the market exhibits bubble behavior, there's crash risk. I mean, that's just the fact. I don't think there's going to be a crash. I think this time is different. I think this is the first time in history that the real estate bubble doesn't pop. I can't, because if I just go off of my experience. Now, experience will always outweigh street smarts over book smarts. Unless you've lived through a recession as a bill-paying adult, not as a kid at home, not a college kid, and suffered a little blowback, you have no idea if a recession comes, what it's going to feel like. You've heard about it, you've studied about it, you watched some YouTube videos, but until you've lived through one as a bill-paying adult and suffered some of the effects, that's when you get someone like me saying the things you're hearing here today. Because I'm interested in protecting people. What's the worst that can happen if I tell people to play it safe right now? They insulated themselves. It's better to be prepared and have something not happen than have something happen, not be prepared. I'd rather, there's no crash, but I got a bunch of cash. Like, I'd rather see that than the flip side. I went all in on real estate, it crashed, and now I'm losing it all, and I'm in a tent or living in my car. I mean, that's what's happening out there already.
Well, when we look at most of the markets in the U.S. right now, it's cheaper to rent than buy. And then people will say, well, why should I do that? Why should I throw my money away? Because if you buy a house that's a piece of junk, it's a money pit, you're going to go broke trying to maintain it, and it's going to wipe you out, and you're going to be house poor if you spend 60% of your income, which now they'll allow you to do, or your debt to income can go up to 60%. Right. And you're guaranteed to have higher taxes next year, property taxes. You're guaranteed to have, higher insurance costs. They're canceling insurance policies right now. People weren't planning for that. So they're putting higher risk policies that are quadrupled what they thought that their bill would be. And, and getting back to you, Scott, on the recession, Peter Schiff, I don't know if a lot of people have heard of Peter Schiff, but I'm actually podcasting with him next week, and I'm excited to bring the episode to everyone. But anyway, I heard him say recently that, we're artificially, stimulating the economy, and this is never a good thing, right? And if you look at every country that has ever done this, including the U.S., we learned this from the 1980s, housing market, and financial, crash that we had back in the 80s. But what happens is recession is a good thing. Right? When we have a recession, that is the natural way for things to make an adjustment of a bubble, right? When we get to a runaway economy and we start seeing where inflation is eating away at affordability and job growth, it gets to a point to where employers are like feeling the pain and need to cut back and lay off. The nice thing to do at that point is to do nothing and let it adjust. But when we artificially, stimulate the economy by injecting, all of this stimulus, fake print, money printing, and raising debt ceilings, our government debt ceilings, and where, the cost of the debt you will outweigh the ability to ever balance the budget again. Remember balancing of budgets? But what happens is when we kick that can down the road, the crashes and the recessions are worse because it's a vicious cycle. And who ends up losing are the ones, the middle class and, the ones that the lower income earners, they lose. the ones that are wealthy that can capitalize on the downturn, bring it on. The harder the crash, the bigger the downturn, the more that the rich can capitalize on other people's losses. And what are we learning here? This is like insanity.
Oh, big time. I mean, it's so simple. I mean, bigger bubble equals bigger blowback, but we overheated. I always talk about on the show is this is the real estate show, but this is much bigger than real estate, friends. I mean, we are a debtor nation. I saw a commercial the other day. It was like a Ford commercial. Ford trucks built Ford tough, assembled in America. We're celebrating now being not made in America, assembled. So we, like Peter Schiff, I'm a huge fan and believe a lot of what he's picking apart. But yeah, I mean, we've backed ourselves in a corner, friends. In my opinion, this is what we have. So we had a casino climate from the money dump. It found its way into real estate. We created the bubble, and then we kicked the can too far down the road. We should have risen rates, and right away, oh my God, wait a minute, everybody stop the phone, hold the phone. The real estate market is exhibiting bubble behavior, raise rates, but we didn't. And then the two-headed monster, runaway inflation in a risen interest rate environment. Now we're backed up against, there's nothing we can do. We've already thrown everything but the kitchen sink at this thing. So now we got to let it play out. So whether we end up with hyperinflation or stagflation, or it's not looking good. In my opinion, we've got a lot of headwinds and we're just scratching the surface. We're talking economics. What about social unrest? What about political unrest? This thing's like the triple threat, in my opinion. So anybody saying that this somehow magically real estate, I sell real estate and I think no crash risk here, then you don't understand economics, in my opinion.
Yeah. Joe, if you could pull up the chart, I just want to show everybody, that hasn't seen it, but pull up the median home chart, Fred chart, where we could talk about the bubble where Scott is talking, and I've been mentioning about, the inflated home prices. I mean, it's just not sustainable. And, and to the people that are saying that a crash could never happen. And I mean, these are big name people that are saying it, right? I mean, Barbara Corcoran. I mean, look at this, guys. I mean, let's just take a minute and let's look at this chart. Look at the fact of that trajectory from 2020. We haven't seen anything like this dating back to 1960s, right? This is prices of houses sold, right? So, I mean, when we're talking about things like this, I mean, Scott and I, we're not rocket scientists. I don't know, Scott, you're not an economist, right? You're not a PhD economist. I mean,
I'm unaccredited, but yes, I'm an armchair economist.
I mean, most economists that I've heard, they have special interest, right, to what they're saying. They work for companies. I mean, when we're hearing from Dr. Yoon, the chief economist at the National Association of REALTORS, do you think that he benefits from coming out and saying that we are headed into a disaster? No. Do you think that Bernanke, the chairman of the Fed back in the 2008 crisis, he even said there's no way that we're going to see a housing market crash. There is no way that we're going to see bank failures, right? What did we see? We saw millions of people lose their home, right? We already started bailing out banks, right? March 12th of this year. All right, let's take a look at this. I want to look at a statement that was released from the National Association President Tracy Casper today. I just want to talk about this lawsuit again for a minute, because I think we're far from over on this thing. But one thing I want everybody to realize is that you're going to see big change in the real estate industry. And one of the things that we're doing here and we have been doing here is trying to educate people. We've been trying to educate buyers and sellers, but buyers really to, like Scott's saying, I mean, I would rather tell you that it's not a good time to buy than tell you that, like, Barbara Corcoran said, as soon as we see interest rates with a 5 in front of it, you're going to be sorry that you didn't buy, basically, because the prices are going to skyrocket and we could see prices surge 10, 15, 20%, right? I think is what she said. You guys can Google it, right? I mean, nonsense. That's madness.
She's entitled to her opinion. She should also say, this is what I think, not this is what's going to happen. And so, this is clear cheerleading because she's heavily vested in real estate and real estate companies. So you have to really read between the lines, look between the cracks. Where's my information coming from? And of course, mainstream media, the establishment, they try to control contagion. They don't want you doing bank runs. It's all about contagion. So they're saying one thing, but they probably believe another. Everything you guys, the truth is usually somewhere in the middle, right? So we have to differentiate, what's fact and what's fiction here. I would say you don't want your highs too high, your lows too low. You don't have to be a doom and gloomer, but you might not want to be, complete rainbows and sunshine. Expect the unexpected. We just had a really significant world event, and it's having its clear blowback. Not even the U.S., Canada's in trouble. China's in trouble. UK's, their housing markets are collapsing, and we are going to get it too. Now, some areas are going to sustain themselves, potentially. So there's ways to buy smart right now. I can go help you buy right now. I'm helping a lot of you buy right now. We're throwing offers, not fall in love with anything. Test it with an offer. If they're not willing to play ball, we move on. And we check the rent ranges. We not even if it's not a rental. We want to know what this thing would rent for because that's the true value of a home. If my payment's within its rent range, let's throw them an offer. If I'm getting under a payment, even at the high interest rate, make sure my cost to carry is within its rent range if you want any security. Because that way, in a downturn, someone else can make your payment while you figure things out. That's the only thing I can do to protect buyers right now, Todd, personally, in my opinion.
I have a buyer right now that is looking at a house. And in fact, we saw the house. And it's had 2 price reductions. And the seller bought another house. The seller lived at this house for about 20 years. And we put an offer in on the house, and we are probably, I think we're about close to $50,000 away, and the house is priced in the low 6s. And I talked to the listing agent today, and she said, yeah, but the house, right across the street 4 months ago sold for, $20,000 more than this one's listed at right now. I'm like, what does that mean? I mean, you have no showings. You have a seller that's saying she doesn't want to take an offer. But here's what the seller said to my buyer. Well, I mean, really, the price that you're offering me and the price that I'm asking is really not that much difference. I'm like, $50,000 is not much different, then why don't you just reduce the price? If that's what you're saying. I mean, to my buyers, they're looking at the payments going, man, this is insanity, right? So my buyers trying to come up with this reason to stretch themselves and stress themselves out. And finally, after a conversation today, we were like, look, just chill out. You know what? Let's just wait. Let's just see what the seller has to say in 3 months or 4 months with their overpriced listing that no one is going to look at. And I think that people have to realize that, look, the market has changed. We can't cheerlead. And that's why I tell buyers, if your agent hasn't transacted in the last couple of months, they don't even know what the climate is. I mean, I still see agents saying they have to, give over list price on properties and put in these different escalation clauses and things like that. And I'm like, no, you don't. But I mean, they don't know because they've only done 2 transactions in, 14 months.
Yeah, right. Well, and like you said, a lot of people have euphoric recall. So like that person you're probably working with right now, the listing agent went to the seller and said, they just sold 4 months ago down the street. we're going to get you off the market so quick on this one. And the climate's changed. And then the offers didn't come. So they don't want to eat crow and go back to their seller and say the environment's changed and this is the best offer we have. We might want to take it. No, because they promised them. And the seller's stuck on that price and what their initial conversation was at the listing agreement. But you said this week. So we've got these examples running all over the place right now. People have euphoric recall. They're being brought back down to reality. Unfortunately, some of them are going to crash and burn because unless you, depending on when you bought, you only have so much room that you can reduce before you're going, negative. So, it's a really tricky dynamic out there right now in terms of negotiating. And I have clients right now, they're right off into the sunset people. This is their forever home, right? $3 million. The house is contingent, which means the seller's saying, we'll accept your offer, but we have to get our offer accepted on replacement. Contingent offers suck. Because they're complicated, they're just complicated because it means they've got to orchestrate a new buy. We can't just buy their house and take it off the market. So we're like, well, hey, here's our offer, a great offer. And, we'll work with you on your contingency. So they're still holding out for full price. And we're there and they have they're like, well, we have some other people circling. Oh, well, have they written an offer? No, but they're circling. You might want to consider this offer because if we pull it, we're out. We're down the road. And that's what I want to see. I want to see people get their hands dirty, not pussyfoot. I get so many agents I don't want to make the other side. I might have to work with them in the future. Well, you might not have clients to work with in the future if you don't put their needs before the other agents. Gosh, what's going on out here? It's like Halloween or something, Todd. It's Twilight.
Trick or treat. Before we take some questions, I just want to kind of bring you up to date on this. Did you get this email from Tracy Casper today?
Yeah.
So going back to the trial, this matter is not close to being final. We'll appeal the liability finding because we stand by the fact that NAR rules serve the best interests of consumers, support market-driven pricing, and advance business competition. We remain optimistic we will ultimately prevail. In the interim, we will ask the court to reduce the damages awarded by the jury. Goes on to say that NAR was formed 100 years ago because there was a need for a higher level of ethical practice, and that's what I want to talk about. We should all be proud that realtors continue to serve that role. I know our mission to advocate for homeownership is always put our clients' interest first is unwavering, and that's what you're talking about, Scott, them not doing. We recognize our legal team and outside counsel have worked tirelessly on the case. It will likely be several years before we reach a conclusion. I'm grateful to the NAR staff and our 1.5 million members who work to serve their clients every day. So what do you think? I mean, do you think that this 100-year-old organization, do you think they're maintaining a higher level of ethical practice?
Well, I think they're trying. I really do. I don't want to fall or cast shade on NAR. The broker, our brokerage, we operate at the highest level. Everything's by the book, but then you deal with individual, salespeople, and what they do outside the office, what they're doing can't always be policed. But the organization and brokerages, as a rule, most of them are good people. Of course, there's some bad apples, and that's why we're talking today. There's always a bad apple. It's going to spoil the whole bunch. So, I think with the organization, the NAR, real estate as a whole, it's just become it's big business now, and it's really gotten away from it. It's almost like they just can't contain it anymore. The money is too insane, which is, I can see how some are like, the commissions are too big. It's not about that. It's really about not creating a real estate bubble and euphoria in the markets, and then having Wall Street pile in and then start dumping properties. And we're about to collapse the market. And we're one news event away from a race to the bottom, a flash crash. But even if we don't get it, we can already see the natural progression of where things are going. There's certainly, it's not looking good for a lot of areas. And the ones that are sustaining themselves are flatlining at best. They're just kind of in a holding pattern. and we're seeing the dominoes start to fall. So, in terms of the NAR, I don't know, Todd. It's a tough one for me. Like I just think it's getting to be too big for even them to handle this thing. It's getting away from them.
Yeah. Well, I'd like to go back to, do you think that the agents, I mean, look, you deal with agents every day, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. You make calls to agents
all day, every day.
Every day, all day?
Not all day, but every day, at least an agent a day.
Yeah. And you think that the bulk of the ones that you talk to are professional?
That I do, yes, because that's my staff's job, is to identify the highest rated agent in people's area, and then have them call me so I can get them, prepped in terms of who they're about to work with. Somebody siding on the side of caution. But I do. So let's say I attach agent to somebody. I do occasionally, and I tell my clients, like, listen, I'm going to build you a team. I'm going to be part of your team. I'm going to get the highest rated agent in the area. Their job's to do boots on the ground and write our offers. We don't have to love them. We just kind of like, there's no such thing as a perfect agent.
Are you talking about the agents that you put in your network?
The one that are within our brokerage.
Yeah.
So
you guys have sales meetings at your brokerage?
Of course.
Are they in person?
Yeah, now they are.
How many agents do you have at your office?
Well, we have 100,000 people, 3 offices in my city, and so it varies.
Your brokerage has 100,000 agents?
No, here my city has a population of 100,000 people.
No. I'm saying, how many agents do you have within your brokerage?
I would say a few hundred agents for sure in the brokerage.
Tell me what a sales meeting is like. Do you have is it like at a hotel, a conference room? I mean, you have 100 agents show up for your sales meeting?
We have a big main office in town that we have our meetings at. Sometimes we'll have it maybe at a title company. We'll host our meetings.
Do you have 100 agents from your office show up? I mean, how many are there?
Not anymore, because a lot of them got all really conditioned for Zoom, and so they're not as comfortable coming back to in person. But it's slowly kind of coming back a little bit, I guess.
Yeah.
But with that being said, my point was, a lot of times we'll fire, like, I'll get a call, hey, Scott, can you get me a new agent? Like, they just don't get it. Like, I tried to get them to write the offer, and they said they didn't want to offend the seller. I'm like, yeah, no problem. We'll fire those ones and get you a new one. It's rare, but it happens. I usually have to have a come to Jesus moment with the agent. Listen, here's the deal. Don't sugarcoat the client. You're going to lose them. This one's playing it safe. They're not going to get into a bidding war. Would you like a client? All right, Scott. Thanks, man. I feel the same way. I love you on YouTube. Okay, great. Let's go to work.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we have a lot of work to do in the industry, man. I'll tell you what. I mean, I get frustrated. I think one of the biggest frustrations that I have in my day is dealing with agents. And, I'm just, being honest. I mean, I think it's, it's hard to get them to show up for sales meetings. It's hard to get them to answer the phone. It's hard to get them to call you back in a timely fashion. It's hard to get them to confirm that you've submitted your offer on a property. And I mean, it's not a whole lot going on right now. I mean, that's just my experience. I think that we need to really, I think that all the brokers out there right now should be really paying attention to this lawsuit, because I think a lot of brokers have they're pretty big. They have, 3,000, 8,000, huge, franchises. And, I think that what's going to happen here is that this thing isn't going to stop. I think that a couple things that are going on, everybody wants change. I think a lot of people want change in the real estate industry. They want transparency as buyers and sellers. They want affordable housing. They want to know who they're hiring now. And if they don't, then they're really living, in the dark somewhere. If we don't take something out of what's going on and identify that this 100-year-old system isn't really working that great, if we really stop and look at the customer satisfaction ratings of, do they think that they had a good experience, or would they use the agent again? NAR has these stats where they're like, oh yeah, 70% of the people say that they'll use their agent again. I don't believe that. I think that depends on who you poll, right? I mean, if you're polling and where you poll.
Economic conditions. You ask
Yeah.
them from a year from now and they're upside down in their house. Now they're pissed. But we need a fall guy. And that's the problem, I think, right now is some people got hurt and people want, they want to blame somebody. There's got to be a fall guy. And then we start doing what we're doing now, which is putting the industry under a microscope.
I'm glad.
Like, this doesn't pass the smell test.
I'm glad. I'm glad to see it. I'm glad to see it. I hope it cleanses the industry of the agents that shouldn't be in it. I think that they should double the fees and triple the continuing education, and that it should be a harder barrier to entry. I think it's one of the industries. I mean, we are, because of what we do, and look, it goes against these associations, right? Because if you hack away at their membership, they don't make as much money. So if you can make sure that your broker, look, as a broker, in order to join the MLS, I have to certify that I will require everybody that works under my brokerage to be a realtor and pay realtor dues, even if they're in referral status, right? I can't do that. They dictate to me how I run my company. I don't like that. I'm sorry.
No.
I don't think don't tell me how to run my business.
Right.
I'm the one. And look, and don't tell me what I can and cannot do with my client's listing that I'm responsible for selling. You know what I mean, look at it. So now I'm boxed into these, I have to do this. Look, I got a fine, man. I got a email of a fine because I did a video on my client's $1.5 million listing, right? And I had, hey, thanks for watching my video. I'm Todd Sachs. Thanks for touring my, watching my listing video. I'm Todd Sachs, a broker, Sachs Realty. It's my listing. They sent me something. One of the crybaby agents reported me. I'm sure that's what happened. And, I get a fine from the MLS, Bright MLS, and I appeal it, and they deny me the appeal. I said, wait a minute. You're telling me, show me why I can't have in a video link in the tours, not even on the MLS, but on YouTube. Show me why I can't say that this is my listing and thanks for watching my video. And they sent me this thing. I said, now show me what Zillow and Realtor.com and all of these other, consumer facing sites, what do they have to do to put my listing, my client's house for sale that I'm under contract to sell? What do they have to do for me and my listing when they publish it? And they said, well, they have to put your name of your brokerage, your number, that you're the listing agent. What's the difference? What's the difference? So Zillow has to do it, the consumer-facing site, but the MLS that goes from broker to broker, from agent to agent, I can't have a link to my video on there. I mean, most of the people that show up on my listing have no idea about the house. I'm there when the agents come through and I ask them, 9 out of 10 of them, I say, do you know anything about this house? They're like, oh, yeah. And I say, okay, well, it's a concrete house, right? They're like, huh? Well, yeah, it's on the first line of the description that this is a concrete house, an insulated concrete form house, and that's uncommon in Maryland. Oh, I didn't see that. Well, you didn't even look at the listing. So why am I not allowed to advertise and market my listing and me as the listing broker on a video? Well, that's because it's against the rules. There's a lot of crap out there that, look, I mean, we got to revamp this stuff, man. If we want transparency, we want honesty, we want fair trade in business, then we need to expose some of these things that are happening. We need to hold these agents and brokerages accountable for what's going on and what their people are doing, right? And until the public steps up and says, that's it, I'm going to interview better, I'm going to, demand answers, and they start seeing, that they need to be involved and be more educated in the process, we need to cut this nonsense out because, like I said, it's the biggest purchase that anybody makes in their life, man. It's their house, right? And the remorse is high. The claims are high. The lawsuits are high. We're seeing it in mainstream media, and the brokerages are losing. And the National Association of REALTORS is losing. A jury is saying this isn't right. after a 14-day trial, this isn't right. You have to believe. I mean, do you believe in the system?
Yeah, I hear you, Todd. We need to drain the swamp. Really, is what we need to do. It's just really another byproduct of what we're seeing now is a mass contraction in real estate business and revenues. And a lot of these people, these higher ups that have huge financial gain in real estate, not only the agents on up, they weren't, a lot of them weren't ready for this. We're seeing a massive cool down. You're going to see who was ready and who wasn't, I believe, in this reverse course of sorts.
Here's a good one here. Scott, what do you think? When's the lawsuit coming against Zillow? You think that's coming?
Yeah, they might be next.
Huh?
They might be next. I mean,
what do you think about their Zestimate? Do you think they were responsible for high prices?
well, I'm sure. I mean, Zillow's a double-edged sword. What I don't like about Zillow is how they really almost trick their user to like request some information. It's so full of click buttons. So request a tour, click here for financing, click here for that. And they just sell clicks. And they disguise it as, oh, it's a cute fuzzy button to request some information about the house. Honey, find out how deep the pool it is. Next thing you know, they sold your click to a real estate agent or a lender or somebody. They're just, and so, they I mean, but again, they have guidelines they're operating with. Their Zestimate is, here's where the Zestimate goes all wrong. The Zestimate doesn't tell me if you're occupied or unoccupied. It takes recent sales, computes it, and this is basically its mid-range value. That's fine. Now I got to look at the house. Let's say my house is staged to perfection. It's beautiful. It needs nothing. Okay, that mid-range value, I like it. But then the same house that has squatters, tenants in it, dogs, it's been trashed, it needs new everything, has the same mid-range value. Because it can't differentiate move-in ready or needs work in that Zestimate.
Scott, what do you think about this? Why does the industry need buyer agents? You don't need a buyer's agent to buy a car.
Yeah, well, that's a good question. A lot of times people will just wander onto a listing and use the selling agent to represent them. You don't have to have a buyer's agent, but for whatever reason, that could end up being the case at some point, is just, the listing agent handles everything. I don't know how that would ever happen, but it's a great question. Why does the industry need a buyer's agent? Does it really need one? I think it does, only because, like I say, it's like going to court using the other side's attorney. You don't want to fall into somebody's trap. You want somebody that's able to negotiate on your behalf. And
yeah,
so,
I agree.
With the car, things are a little more set. Here's that price, MSRP. Now you can go negotiate a car, too, but it's a little different dynamic. Cars are the second biggest purchase we make. So it's a really good question. I like that one. I might have to give that one some thought and turn it into an episode on my channel.
Hey, Scott, do you think we'll have house facts like we have car facts?
Right. The health of the house. It's been through 4 owners and 2 accidents, fire, flood. Should.
I think that look, and I'm going to just put it out there. I think in some cases the buyer's agent's more important than the listing agent. I think that they both have their place. I don't think we should get rid of either one of them. And I'm going to say that too, because a lot of people are like, you don't need an agent. I bought a house back in so-and-so. I did it for sale by owner, whatever. It is a fact that, if you have a good agent representing you, whether you're a buyer or a seller, this is a very good thing in most circumstances. And the reason is because it's an emotional transaction. And I think that whenever we can put somebody in the middle that shouldn't be emotional, that's good at managing emotions, in a lot of cases with sellers, it's a matter of getting them to the next chapter in life. And sometimes when they get involved in the transaction and the negotiations, they become irrational and they don't think well, they don't behave well, and they will lose when that starts to happen, because, they need to stay focused, and a good agent will help them stay focused on the objective, right? And a lot of people have a hard time. They take it personal that it's their house, and it really, or that it's their home. And there's a lot of saying that, it becomes a house when you go to sell it, not a home. As far as you need to let that go, take your pictures off the wall and move on, because the other people coming into it, they want their home. They don't want your home. They want to put themselves in it. But the buyers, there's so much, I think, if anything, first-time buyers absolutely should have great representation, because there's so many different moving parts, and a knowledgeable agent is going to be able to walk them through those parts. And I think that we need more transparency with that too. I'd like to see us get to a point in the industry where we start talking about the 10-year cost or potential 10-year cost of a home. So I think, and one of the things that we're going to be starting to do in our brokerage is really educating buyers on, let's get beyond today. How long are you going to stay in the house? What do you think? All right, we maybe need to add a couple years to that. So you're saying 5 to 7 years. Let's think about being in the house for 10 years, because life happens. Let's start looking about all the things that you may need to do in the next 10 years to be prepared for. Because I think this is where our first-time buyers get into the most trouble financially, because they're not realizing, yes, that house may pass inspection today, but good common sense and good inspectors are going to say, these are the things you need to start budgeting for. These are the things you need to start preparing for. Then we should take all of those costs and put that into some type of realistic, calculation of, is this practical? Is this feasible? Do you think it's great for an inspector to say, hey, your HVAC is at the end of life and you need to budget for a new one. But it's also good to say, okay, the HVAC is going to cost you $25,000. If that goes up tomorrow or in 2 years from now, how are you going to budget a $25,000 expense in 2 years? If it's at end of life. So I think that, a good agents, and out of all of this, there's opportunity for us to just be more transparent and to do more educating our buyers.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yeah, I always say, like I said, a lot of times I know once I sell somebody a house, it becomes all about the house. They're consumed by this house. So I've always said, I'd rather see you stay on the sidelines as a renter for life, but buy investment properties, because I know I'm trained in psychology, sales psychology of people, and I play half therapist, half sales person most of the time when I'm dealing in real estate. So, like you said, if you
there he goes, Scott, he must be having trouble out there in California. Charlton Zimmerman, why isn't Todd or Scott talking about foreclosures being up? We'll switch this subject for a minute. One of the big things that I think that we're going to see over the next couple of months is an uptick in foreclosures. And one of the reasons is because the COVID money has finally ran out. And in November, the people that haven't been paying their mortgages are going to be required to pay. And I think we have a lot of people that are behind. So I think that one of the things that we're going to see, and, we've got a new Speaker of the House. We have a lot of pressure on, whether we should have more stimulus, not have stimulus. I don't think we're going to see any money printing or, that's going to get to homeowners or, relieve student debt or any other kind of debt, at least until 2025. So I think that what we're going to be looking at here is over the next year or so, I think we're going to be looking at some hard times for many people, and foreclosures are going up, Charlton. So, is it going to be a epidemic over the next 12 months? I don't think so. I think it's going to take about 12 to 18 months on average for a foreclosure to actually take place. The White House doesn't want to see them. I think that if you have any kind of a job or any kind of hope to pay, the banks right now are working with people on the back end. So I don't think we're going to see massive foreclosure.
Certainly don't rule it out.
No, I don't think we're going to see it in the next year.
We're seeing an uptick, so that's definitely a warning sign. So we definitely got to pay attention to the potential of that. Is there a high percentage of likelihood, like Todd said, next 12 months foreclosure crisis? Probably not. It won't be until mainstream media gets a hold of anything that it really takes off, and that's one of the situations we might have with this NAR website or lawsuit. This could grab mainstream media, and this could shake the housing market to its core just from buyer confidence and seller confidence. Because if we start grabbing headlines for the wrong reason, this could be a big issue, friends. So we watch for this, how it's portrayed on mainstream media, this whole NAR lawsuit.
All right, let's take a look at this article that National Association of Realtors put out on the 30th. So yesterday, prior to the verdict being read. It says buying or selling a home may be more difficult. It says the plaintiffs in the case allege that the National Association of Realtors participation role, which requires listing brokers to advise buyer brokers of how much they will be compensated for finding a buyer in order to list a property in realtor affiliated local multiple listing services marketplaces, is an antitrust violation that inflates sellers' cost. And then it says it all starts with the MLS broker marketplaces. Hundreds of these virtual marketplaces exist around the country as databases of all the homes for sale in a given market. That means a buyer can work with any agent participating in the local broker marketplace and get access to the widest selection of properties. Meanwhile, sellers get access to the largest pool of buyers. These marketplaces are by far the largest and most trusted resource to make the best and most informed decisions about buying and selling a property. Without MLS broker marketplaces, there would be no dedicated home for all of the verified, up-to-date listings. Information on homes would be inaccurate, unreliable, and scattered across real estate sites. Buyers and sellers likely would have less choice among brokerages, services, and compensation models because all those businesses would not have one place to come together. Instead, these marketplaces provide everyone with the means of entry and the same set of verified and complete housing information. That's because buyer and seller brokers are putting their most complete and up-to-date information in these centralized databases. Scott, what they're talking about here is that the control of the MLS still, that, becoming a realtor, you still control the MLS. They're not talking about opening the MLS up to the public and still keeping a common database. Do you see a common thread about, what is wrong with, not having buyers and sellers, negotiate commissions, right? What does that have to do with using the MLS?
Not much, you would think, right?
I mean, we should still be able to have access to the MLS, right? You just would have in there whether there's buyer compensation or not.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, it's, for me, it just seems like a bunch more of byproduct of, a real estate bubble that's starting to have blowback, and people now are mad that the bubble's over. So we got to start blaming and pointing fingers and changing this and changing that. It's really noise to me, really, and I don't know how it's going to shake out, Todd. I just really don't.
Yeah.
Other than the fact that if mainstream media, when they get a hold of this topic, and if they portray it in a way that's negative, we're in big trouble. It's going to shake. It's not so much for the industry itself. It's for the marketplace. It's just people aren't going to have confidence in real estate anymore the way they maybe once did. And understandably so. And it's just because, I get it. You see all these people on Instagram and TikTok showing off as real estate professionals like it's some big game, some big joke, and how it's glamorous and it's $1 million listing. It's not. That's just all social media fluff. So if I'm handling the biggest transaction of somebody's life, I'm going to show up in a tie. I'm going to get my roll up my sleeves. I'm going to get you sold or bought. I'm certainly not going to go show off and say, I'm happy to report I had the highest recorded sale for the neighborhood for my clients. No, you didn't. You needed a bubble. The bubble delivered that, not you. Yet here we are trying to act like we're somehow responsible for the highest recorded sale in the neighborhood. No, you're not. No, you're not. Stop saying that. Bubble did that.
Yeah. We have living in Omaha, David Matney. Todd, are you going forward in your market? Are you going to require your agents to be members of NAR? You know, it's a really good question. I have had conversations with my attorney about this. It's one of those things where in Maryland, we need access to the forms, and it's the affordability of the access to the forms. And the way things are structured right now, I can't really afford to not be able to use the MLS or have access to show my buyers properties that are for sale. This would actually push me, by not being a member of the National Association of REALTORS, this would actually push me to be at the mercy of real estate agents more than what I am right now that are on the other side. Can you imagine calling up an agent? You know, a lot of the agents put listings on the MLS. They don't even want you to call them, right? They don't want to talk to you unless you've already shown the property. They want you to use the showing service or some other means, talk to their, their co-listing agent, blah, 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 all these different things. Now, if I have to call the listing agent and say, hey, I was wondering, I don't have access to the electronic lockbox, but I was wondering if you could give me a code, or I was wondering if you could give me, and in some of the cases, like my local Board of Realtors, the Greater Baltimore Board of Realtors, they don't allow one-day codes. So I can't even call the agent up and say, hey, can you give me a one-day code so that I can use the lockbox? So if I don't have access to the lockbox, not being a realtor, I have to call the agent up and beg them to set a time for me to be able to bring my client by and show. And the difficulty of this is we don't even know a lot of times what time we're going to be there. We do showing windows. If I'm showing a client 5 houses in an evening or on a Saturday, I have to use showing ranges of times so that, because we may be longer at one property, we might run into traffic, so it would be a nightmare, right? So, it's almost impossible to do to not be a member unless I'm strictly commercial, right? Because most commercial agents, they have nothing to do with the National Association of Realtors. So, which brings up another point, because I have a friend of mine that is with Redfin. And Redfin did this publicity stunt, well before, they want to say, we're going to give up our NAR. We're going to, we've given them, all this money. And because of this reason and that reason, we don't, agree with their business model, and we're pulling out, screw NAR. So I call my buddy up and I say, what's the deal with this, man? And he says, it ain't true. He said it's basically they're not getting rid of NAR in the states that they need, certain things. I mean, every state's different, I guess, with access and MLS access and showing properties. And he said, we can't give up in Maryland. We can't give up our NAR membership for these reasons. So, I mean, they're not transparent. A lot of the businesses, they're not transparent in what they're saying, or forthright and, outwardly forthright with what's going on. They're still, they're holding, NAR holds a lot of this industry, with what's going on. I mean, Scott, can you get rid of NAR?
Well, yes and no. I mean, I will operate with a partner, and so as long as one of us, has, access, we're good. But no, you're not operating without it. It would be impossible.
Yeah.
It's impossible.
So I guess the question is that fair?
Well, I mean, that's open for interpretation, right? But yeah, I mean, yes and no. It's just, checks and balances in the industry. This is one of them. And so whether it's fair or unfair, not my, I operate within the guidelines that I have to operate within. And, I do a high level, job operating within those guidelines. So that, like, for me, like, a lot of stuff doesn't bother me so much. I know there's other agents that's probably bothering a lot, or brokerages or people. But yeah, you're not operating efficiently unless you're a member.
Yeah. All right. What's a good agent, Scott?
A good agent is somebody willing to put your needs before their own.
Well said. I couldn't have said it better myself. I mean, that's what we're supposed to be, fiduciaries, right? Do you think the party in power will let a recession occur in an election year? What do you see next year in the housing market?
Well, they're going to try to avoid it, of course, and we will have bailouts. I think one is already knocking at the door. So they will definitely try to stay it off for as long as possible, probably to get through the election year, whether it's too big to do that or not. So, yeah, I believe correction, recession, depression. Those are the three levels of economic downturns. We're in the first phase, the correction phase. If we can't stop it there, we'll enter recessionary times. And if we can't stop it there, we will enter depressionary times. And throughout recordable history, we've had all three. So it's never been if, it's purely when. And that was the crisis a big enough catalyst to usher in a deep cycle recession, a category depression? And I believe it is. I believe probably 5 years out, maybe, we could be talking about, the modern Great Depression. I hope I'm wrong, but I always say, it's better to have a plan and not need it than need a plan and not have it. Expect the unexpected. So these are the $1 million questions living in Omaha. I mean, this is the $1 million question. We all have to put a percentage of likelihood on that, and we all are going to put our own percentage of likelihood. But like I said before, for most people that haven't lived through a situation like that before, they just don't know how that they might have heard about this stuff, but they don't know what to really expect.
What is going on, Scott? Before we jump off of here, I want to talk about what is going on with this California first-time buyers Dream Act that they're putting into place. Have you heard about this? Where Fannie Mae is going to be, if you're a first-time buyer, they're going to give you a loan on your down payment and put it on the back end and profit share on your equity.
Yeah, it's another byproduct of a housing bubble and an unaffordability issue. And so it's just another feel-good, bamboozle to buyers to try to get them in. If you can't qualify for a house, you shouldn't be buying a house. It's just, I hate to be the messenger here. So yeah, California is in a complete world of its own. And I've heard about it. I haven't dealt with it. I've had a couple people reach out and ask me about it. I'm like, I don't know. I don't really condone that. So yeah, it's
like fractional ownership, man. They give you this interest-free loan they can tack on the back and your down payment. And then when you go to sell, you pay it back and then you pay them a portion of your equity.
You may as well just start writing subprime mortgages again. I mean, we're putting people in homes that didn't qualify. That's what I hear this program. That's what I see this program as. And that's the other challenge. If you had to requalify everybody that bought in the crisis, I bet you the majority of them would not qualify anymore.
Yeah, that's some amazing stimulus right there, buddy.
So,
well, look, man,
yeah, this is really bad. I was big. I should say bad. It's definitely big.
Crazy.
And, yeah.
Well, I appreciate you, buddy. I thanks for jumping on here with us. And I mean, guys, we know that there are some changing times ahead in the real estate industry, the housing market specifically. I think that we should all, pay attention to what we're hearing. If you're looking to buy out there, definitely proceed with caution. Because we, as Scott has said, we could be looking at some economic times that we haven't seen before. This could potentially be a major downturn that we are headed into. And if you're a seller in today's market, you may want to look at your options. If you have to sell, if you need the same amount of money that you thought you could get a year ago, you may be stuck holding onto that house in your low interest loan for quite some time. Because the buyers right now, I feel, are squeezed, they're stressed out, they're tapped out, interest rates are high, but our job is to keep you informed. So, Scott, any parting words?
No, I just want to wish everybody a great evening. Thank you for having me on. Sorry I had some technical difficulty, but yeah, get your ducks in a row. Make sure you're financially fit. See if properties pencil out. Get in the hands of a good real estate agent. If you don't like the one you're with, get a new one. And, just like Todd said, proceed with caution. 95% of all millionaires made their money in real estate. It is the path to wealth, but you have to play it safe. This is not a casino climate. And that's what happened in the crisis. And I have a feeling the house always wins. We see some people go and bust in this one. So our job now is to just see where the deals are. If that's what you want to do, if you're selling, get in front of this thing, be forward thinking, critical thinking, and understand the waters you're swimming in. There's shark infested out there. You've got to play this thing strategically. Other than that, hope everybody enjoyed tonight's show, and thanks for having me on.
Thank you, Scott. And if you guys like the video, you can hit the thumbs up. It'll let Scott and I know that you did. And we always appreciate when you subscribe to our channels and hit the alert bell. You'll know every time we upload content. We've got some great shows headed your way. This weekend, we're talking about the Boston, Massachusetts market Saturday at 10 o'clock a.m. on our channel. And we've got some surprises headed your way. So, guys, we appreciate you. Have a good night. We'll talk to you soon.